The Migration Pact began as a proposal from the European Commission in 2020. It was formally adopted in 2024 and is scheduled for full implementation in mid 2026. At its core lies something called mandatory but flexible solidarity. That phrase sounds harmless, but we know better. In practice, this means that every EU member state must contribute to handling migration pressure. They can either relocate immigrants from frontline states or they can make financial contributions. And in other words, that means take the migrants or pay. This mechanism is supposed to relieve pressure on countries like Italy, Greece, and Spain, where arrivals concentrate at the EU's external borders. But notice what it does not do. It does not stop the inflow of people. It just redistributes it. Supporters call this solidarity. And what kind of solidarity is that really? Is it solidarity to a quiet erosion of national sovereignty? Because the legal precedent was already set. It exists. Back in 2015, Hungary and Slovakia challenged the EU's temporary location quotas, and the European Court of Justice dismissed those challenges. That ruling effectively confirmed that Brussels can impose relocation mechanisms on member states. So when the new pact claims that relocation is flexible, many governments hear something completely different: forceful quotas by another name. If migration is such a problem, why are we not closing the borders? Well, because their goal is to ruin your country too. Supporters argue that this pact will stabilize migration flows, but the numbers tell a very different story. Asylum applications, if we can call it asylum, where we all know it's migrants. Migrants across the EU fell sharply in 2025, down roughly 23% from the previous year. Germany alone saw applications drop from about 230,000 in 2024 to roughly 113,000. And why? Not because of the Immigration Pact, that's for sure. It's because national governments tightened border control. The lesson is actually really simple. Borders work. Redistribution does not work, and we don't want these migrants. Across Europe, the structural pressure remains. Take France, for instance. In the Paris region, shelters are overloaded and reception systems, they face serious structural flaws. Violent crime rose in several categories, and the return of rejected asylum seekers or migrants remains limited. They're not deported. Integration challenges persist as if integration was the goal, which it's not. That's not what multiculturalism means at its core. It has nothing to do with integration. And unemployment among migrants remains significantly higher than among native workers. And we pay for their lives. Why? Why is that? The segregated suburban districts, they continue to expand. Like in Germany, municipalities have been pushed to the limit by housing shortages. New arrivals are often placed in sports halls and container housing, and deportations, well, across the EU, only a fraction of rejected migrants are actually returned. Even with a faster process, returns still depend on cooperation from third countries. And why on earth would they want their rapists and murderers back? The Migration Pact attempts to solve the problem that they have created with more migration to members who don't want migrants. But instead of reducing that pressure by closing the borders and remigrating everyone who doesn't belong in Europe, the system spreads its consequences across the continent. It is socialism in practice. We're going to force everyone to suffer the same low. Policies like this rarely stay technical. They become political, and across Europe, migration has already reshaped national politics. Support for anti-immigration parties continues to rise, and with good reason. In France, the debate dominates national elections. In Germany, political polarization over migration continues to deepen. And across the continent, voters increasingly feel that decisions about borders are no longer made in national capitals, but in Brussels. Thankfully, there are dissenting voices inside the European Parliament. One of the most outspoken is the Swedish MEP Charlie Weimers. His position is blunt, and the work of the ECR group has resulted in a proposed return regulation which they won the vote. And frankly, it addresses one of the elephants in the room. Right now, Europe has credibility problems. Thousands of migrants receive deportation orders every year, but only a fraction actually leaves. In many cases, they simply just remain in the EU in legal limbo while slaughtering our people. The next regulation tries to fix that. It creates a single EU system for deportations, which, with clearer process and stronger enforcement, may be able to do something. Does Europe really need more migration management systems? No. Do we need a deportation system? Yes. Do we need fewer migrants entering in the first place? Yes. Secure the external borders. Re-migrate people. We need to end this forced burden sharing. We never asked for this. We never voted for this. We don't want this. You are not going to make us pay either with money or the destruction of our nations just because you feel like opening the borders to third world countries, Ursula von der Leyen, and enforce deportations for those who have no legal right to stay. End the social benefits and force them to pay their own way. The Migration Pact presents itself as some grand European compromise, but compromises only work when they solve the underlying problem. And right now, the evidence suggests something different. Europe is building a sophisticated administrative machine for managing deliberate crisis in which it still refuses to stop. And unless that changes, the fractures inside the European Union will only deepen. Because when the government lose control of the borders, they lose something else as well. They lose public trust, and we have had it.